Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 152 of the Eyes Free Sports podcast. This is your host, Greg Lindberg. Here on this episode, we are visiting with a couple from the Washington, D.C. area. And this couple was part of a group that completed a climb of Mount Kilimanjaro, which is located in Tanzania in Eastern Africa. This climb was back in August of 2025, and I think you'll really enjoy just hearing all about their journey up the mountain, over 19,000 feet, and everything that went into this incredibly unique experience. So let's go ahead and whip out the hiking pole and get hiking up the mountain toward episode 152 of the Eyes Free Sports podcast. All right, so here on this episode of the podcast, we are chatting about a very recent climb of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. And we have two of the climbers who were involved in this amazing event with us here on the podcast. First, I would like to introduce Conchita Hernandez. Conchita, welcome to Eyes Free Sports.
Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely, appreciate your time. And we also have Sachin Pavithran. Sachin, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Really excited to dive into this. We've talked a little bit about mountaineering on this podcast over the last 6 years I've been doing it, but not a whole lot. So I feel like this will be kind of a unique episode here. So why don't we just kick things off with your background so that the listeners can get to know who you guys are just kind of personally, professionally. And Conchita, if you want to kick us off with that.
So I'm Conchita. By trade, I'm a teacher of blind students. I do kind of administrative stuff now. I work part-time at the Maryland School for the Blind. And then I also have my own consulting firm called Conchita Consulting LLC. So I do stuff around accessibility, research, and kind of anything in those areas. Specifically, education is my area of expertise.
Excellent. Certainly very relevant in this day and age, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. And then Sachin, how about you?
Hi, I'm Sachin, and my background is in the policy space, so broad accessibility policy and disability policy. So I'm currently the executive director of U.S. Access Board, which is an independent federal agency under the White House. And most of my career has been working on accessibility and broad disability policy, both domestically and internationally, and been involved in a lot of other activities outside my professional space in different sports like tandem biking and now climbing Kilimanjaro and things like that. And we both are blind as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was going to be my next question. If you just want to talk about your visual impairments.
I have a chromatopsia, which is a genetic recessive condition where I'm legally blind and no color vision, no depth perception, and so that's my condition.
And I'm pretty much totally blind. I have retinitis pigmentosa. I've been blind since my before probably early teens. I'm guessing somewhere around there. And I have some light perception, but usually I'm a cane user, and I use all the different AT to deal with professionally and personal stuff. Sure,
gotcha. So when it comes to sports, kind of recreation, physical activity, I'm curious, have you both always kind of been pretty active in your lives? Would you say?
I've always liked being active. I like going to the gym, staying involved in different sports, different activities. Played some level of go ball in the past, and a lot of tandem biking, and I love hiking and being outdoors.
Yeah, I'm more of the recreation part, so I wasn't like super involved in sports. I was on the go ball team for a little while in the DC area, and then also did some tandem biking. There's a really great organization in our area called the Washington Metro Association of Blind Athletes. So we're both a part of that. And so they put on hikes and canoeing and a bunch of different events that we that we take part in, but I wouldn't say I'm necessarily the person who's like regularly going to the gym before this.
Gotcha. Yeah, same here. I definitely try to be active and, walk. I have a guide dog, so obviously I'm walking naturally a lot and ride my exercise bike, beat baseball, different adaptive sports. But as far as like the super endurance, athlete, which I've had quite a few on this podcast, I'm definitely not in that boat either. So I feel you. So yeah, let's get into this climb. So is it accessible together? Is that kind of the theme or the name of the event?
So the climb, we are part of a larger organization, and this is a conversation that started about, I would say, a little over a year ago. I was at a work trip for some meetings at the UN and ran into a few people who were talking about their experience climbing Kilimanjaro. We were just having some side conversation in between meetings. And during their conversation, they mentioned about when they climbed Kilimanjaro, and I got very interested. So one of the lead person who organized that last climb was in that conversation. So I expressed my interest to do that at some point in my life. So he gave me a call out of the blue several months after that interaction and said, if you're interested, we want to put something together. And I kind of brushed it off thinking it's not going to happen with my schedule, my work schedule. My calendar gets booked up way far in advance, so they said they would work it around my schedule. So they meant it, and they made it happen just around my work schedule. And it was a fairly large group they put together. It was 48 people from around the world, and a lot of them have different disabilities. And we got together and made this climb. It was kind of fascinating too, and many of us never met each other before.
Yeah, there's 3 blind people total, including us. So there was another person, 2 wheelchair users. There was a lot of different
Intellectual
disability. Yeah, different disabilities that were part of this climb. And so the idea of accessible together is just kind of everyone, all different types of disabilities doing this climb.
Gotcha. Interesting. And I'm curious, like the demographics, are we talking like all ages as well?
Yeah, we had all ages. I think the youngest probably was late teens to, I don't know how old was the oldest person, but probably 50s or 60s, somewhere around there.
Yeah, it was a broad range of ages that were part of it.
Right. Interesting. And had either of you had, experience when it comes to, kind of longer form hiking or climbing or etc.?
It's been a while since I've done some, what you'd classify as a long hike. I never done anything more than a day's worth hike. So I've done long hikes, but it's everything within one day, so nothing beyond that. So this doesn't compare to anything I've done in the past.
Yeah, same for me. No, I mean, I've been on very much smaller hikes than Sachin had been on, just kind of short ones around here that were more, I would say more walking than hiking. But yeah, nothing compared to this at all.
Right, I see. And I'm curious, did you guys do anything specifically just to prepare your bodies, just kind of your, the mental side of things for this climb?
Yeah, so we regularly started going to the gym and really using that to train. So we would do like Stairmaster type of thing, weights, treadmill. So that was one big part, just regularly going to the gym. We also walk a lot as well, just the nature of like being blind and using public transit and taking that a lot. So I think just the fact that we walk a lot in our everyday life helped a lot. There's nothing that prepares you for the altitude. You have no idea how your body's going to react. There was even a person who had climbed successfully several years ago, and this time they had to be evacuated. So there's really no way to prepare for altitude. And we were at a disadvantage there as well, because where we live, there's like no altitude as well. So it's hard to prepare for altitude, but we try to prepare physically as best as we could.
Right.
We
Anything else you want to add? Yeah,
Yeah,
Sachin.
we did do some hikes around the DMV area. So, just to get used to navigating different terrains like rocky terrains. And one of our guides who went to this hike lives around this area. So we kind of trained with him so he can help navigate us during the hike as well. So we had 3 guides that joined our small team. So 3 sighted people who joined us. So they were helping us, guiding us during the trips. But 2 of them doesn't live here, so we didn't really train with them. Only one live in this area. So we did go on several hikes with him. But again, like Conchita said, nothing to train for altitude. Is more training for technical, how to maneuver different terrains.
Sure, I see. So just in terms of the journey to Tanzania, just kind of the, how long, I'm curious, like how long the trip was over there and just kind of the initial, getting used to the area.
The whole trip, the trip at large was, I want to say, almost 2 weeks from, with travel and everything. The hike, the climb for the Kilimanjaro, 7 days. It was 5 days up and 2 days down. So that was a big portion of the almost 2-week trip.
Right, I see. And I assume you guys had like a little bit of time once you arrived in Tanzania to kind of get it acclimated, adjusted?
Yeah, we had a few days after we landed. Obviously you lose a day when you travel there, and then we had a few days to get acclimated to the time difference. So we did some, fun local stuff over there, going on a safari and those kind of things. So it was nice to kind of get over the jet lag a little bit. And then we did the 7-day climb. And then pretty much after we got back to the hotel after the climb, we got on a plane the very next day and came back. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
No rest for the weary. So yeah, I'm definitely curious, just kind of like that first day, just kind of walk us through, the first leg of that week-long journey up the mountain.
Yeah, so I'll start off. So we started fairly, not too early like most days. This first day was a little more later in the day that we started. So the base camp was at about 5,500 feet elevation. That's where we started at. So the first day our walk was roughly 6 hours long. So it wasn't terrible the first day. So we went from 5,500 feet to about 8,500 feet elevation. Most of the terrain was not terrible. A lot of, there was some rocks and some, dirt and a combination of those things. But it was probably the easiest of the days. The first day, we were mainly walking through rainforest, so we didn't have much, sun. So it was very shaded, but it was really nice because you could hear all kinds of, birds and animals and all kinds of things walking through the rainforest, which the terrain, that kind of terrain changed soon the rest of the days. So that first day kind of walking through the rainforest was kind of a very different experience compared to the remainder of the climb.
Interesting. And Conchita, anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, I think the first couple of days are just kind of when you're starting to get used to how everything is. Like Sachin said, the first day we start a little later, but every day after that, you start like right at the beginning of the day and walk all day. And I think the first couple of days make you be like, oh, okay, it's hard, but I got this.
Gotcha. Yo. So kind of after that first day, were you guys pretty confident? Was everyone feeling pretty good about the journey at that point?
Yeah, I think I would say I was confident. I think the first day we were more trying to figure out the guiding portion of it. So we spent a lot of time. So just so that you understand the kind of the structure of the group. So you can't just fly into Tanzania and go climb. You got to have local crew supporting you. Even if you're an individual person going, you still have to hire a local crew to help you because no one can go up the mountain by themselves. So to support our 48 member group, the local company that we hired, there was 200 of them who supported our 48. So combination of the local company and us, we were about 250 of us. So the 200 member group from the company that was supporting us, that consisted of 30 guides, porters who were carrying all our stuff, people who were carrying like food and everything up the mountain, because these people are amazing. They were carrying all the materials we need when we get up the mountain. They were cooking fresh meals every day, so we got hot meals every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They carried all our, we still had our packs on, but they carried most of our like heavier stuff, like gears that we are not using, our sleeping bags and those kind of things. They carried those kind of items up everyone was given one big duffel bag that the porters carried up. So they really kind of did a lot of the hard work. We were doing the hiking, but we didn't have to carry all the items, and that's pretty common in Kilimanjaro hiking. It's not unique to us being disabled. That's kind of how most people do it. Now, some people don't bring as many things and they may carry everything in a backpack, but that's very rare. Most people, the porters are carrying the stuff because at some point you're not going to be able to do it because of the altitude.
Sure. Makes sense. As far as sleeping arrangements, talk to me about kind of how that all worked.
So we would go, again, we would walk all day, and then we would get to like a camp, which had, I would call them sleeping arrangements, but it's like little huts. There's no heating or electricity or anything in the huts themselves. So it's more just like a shelter, and then different levels of bathroom availability. So it definitely got very, very cold. But we did have shelter. You can do other routes where you're just kind of like staying in sleeping bags, because kind of who our group was and all the needs. So we did the route where we did sleep in kind of shelters, and then we would eat breakfast and dinner there. And again, like Sachin was mentioning, the local people would cook all our meals. There isn't anything there. It's just kind of like a blank dining hall. So the local guides, they carried up all the food for the whole thing from the bottom and would cook us full breakfast, lunch, and dinner on like real plates, real silverware every day. So so that was kind of like how the food was done. And there could be, depending on what day we arrived where, there were other groups that were also passing through. So they also brought their own local people who are their own cooks. So there isn't like cook for everybody who's there. You're kind of who your group is with.
So there are, I'm not sure how many routes. I think there's like 5 or 6 different routes. Mm-hmm. Our route is the only route that had huts, or they call it bungalows, but it's just a basic structure with a roof over, so you didn't have to sleep in tents. All the other routes, the only option was tents and camping. So that part was nice. The only drawback in this route is it's the longest route. So because of all these different campsites with the huts and stuff, the route is a lot longer. And our summit portion is also the hardest portion compared to the other routes. So we got the comfort of staying in a hut, but we did do the longer portion of the climb as well.
Right. Yeah, obviously nothing fancy, it sounds like, when it comes to these, the lodging, if you want to call it that, mm-hmm. Right?
It was comfortable. Basic. I would have taken, because when you camp using tents, you just don't know what the site is going to look like. So having this really did make a difference. But I don't want to paint the picture that it's, anything
roughing it too much.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. So then I know you mentioned Sachin, kind of the first day maybe wasn't super duper challenging, but I assume as you got higher and higher, it got more challenging. Would you say, right?
Yeah, so it did change. Like the second day, even though the terrain didn't change as much, it was half forest, rainforest, and half the second half was less of the rainforest. Uh, but it was long. It was the longer of uh, the first 2 days. So I think the first day was like 5 to 6 hours. The second day took 8 to 9 hours. And we went from 8,500 to 12,500 ish. So we were making altitude, and it I felt I was a lot more tired that second day. Part of it, I felt like I was trying to pay too much attention to every single detail my guides were telling me, and it was hard to process so much information because there was a lot more rocks. So every step I took, my footing had to be ideal, so I didn't twist my ankle or anything. So hearing all that information for 8 to 10 hours straight was mentally draining, I guess. So I did get a lot more tired that day than the first day, just because of paying attention to so much detail. And again, we were experimenting different guiding techniques also. Things that we thought could work were not working, so we were trying different things. So initially we were just trying where I was tethered to my guide, and we were going that way. On the second day, we switched things around where we all had poles. So I had a pole on my right hand. My guide had a pole on his left hand, but the middle pole we both shared. So he had his hand on the upper portion of the handle, and I had my hand, my left hand, on right below his hand. So he would position that pole where he wanted my foot to go. So I would, instead of following commands, I could feel where the pole ended up because we both were sharing the same pole. So I would just kind of follow that and move. So that kind of helped a little bit of not having to listen to every single, because there's a lot of people around us. And so I'm trying to deal with auditory stuff around me where people are talking, because it's a big group, and they're playing music, meaning like they got drums, they got guitar and everything. All these the people of the local group, the porters and stuff like this, trying to get us energized. So there's a lot going on for me. So that part really was exhausting.
Sure, yeah. I was really curious about the adaptations. And did you guys use, white cane at all during the journey, or pretty
No,
much just the hiking poles?
just the hiking poles, because the cane really would not have done any good.
Held up.
No.
Sure.
Because it's
Understandable.
pretty rough when you're moving. Your cane probably would have gotten beaten up pretty bad.
Exactly. Yeah. And then even thinking of like sighted guide, obviously your arm would get tired, the guide's arm, would get tired like that. That position just wouldn't last, long term. So
Yeah, and the pole served dual purpose. You kind of need the pole to kind of help you lift up, certain areas, and then it kind of served as my cane in a sort. I wasn't using like a regular cane, but as soon as my guide placed the pole, I immediately knew because I would place my foot right at the tip of where that pole landed.
sure.
So it was a lot. That technique was working. At the same time, while our three guides were guiding us, who came from here, the local folks were watching, observing how they were guiding, so that they can step in when the need arises, and which was very helpful, because by the third day, our guides who went from here, our friends who were our guides, altitude sickness started hitting them, and at least two of them were pretty depleted by by the end of the third day.
Wow. Yeah. So it definitely is a real thing, altitude sickness.
Yeah.
And they lived in Utah, so they were used to higher altitude, but it hit them way before they realized, and they were surprised how badly it hit them. And fortunately, Conchita and I, it did not face us at all.
Right. And I assume for altitude sickness, it's mainly just fatigue, being tired,
Yeah.
extreme fatigue.
And some people have migraines and different. It hits people differently, so there's not like one symptom necessarily, but fatigue is definitely a big part.
Sure. Gotcha. So then, just kind of advancing, on the climb up. So let's talk about kind of day 3, maybe the middle, once you kind of reach the halfway point, shall we say?
Sure. So we got to about 12,500 feet. Day 3, we called it more of a acclimatization day at that elevation. So we did do some hiking. We went from that camp to this area called Zebra Rock. So we hiked to Zebra Rock, which was it was like roughly 13,500 feet elevation. So we hiked up to Zebra Rock and came back to our camp at 12,500. So we just did a day hike just to get used to that altitude, because there's a drastic difference, if you're not used to the altitude at that point. Your body, they started checking your oxygen level and everything to make sure everything's going fine. That's when things start changing. So we didn't do anything major, but the terrain definitely was a lot more rockier. But the idea was to get more acclimatized to that altitude before we start doing the big climb.
Yeah, and I think what Sachin mentioned earlier, where you definitely feel it once you're there. Like everybody has like a hard time breathing, and just kind of having the time to be in that area, getting used to it was really, really helpful. So then after that day, it kind of really helped us to be like, okay, our bodies are getting used to it, and we're able to kind of be in this high elevation.
Right. I see. And so then, I assume it sounds like day 4, day 5, the last 2 days were kind of the biggest,
yeah.
the
day
most,
4 and day 5 was pretty much hell. So day 4, we started, from that camp so we went from the camp we were at to Kibo Camp, which is the base camp which is the final camp before you go to the summit. So day 4 and 5, the research was really hard. It was constant. So we started early morning, about 7 a.m., 7:30 a.m., from 12,500 feet to 15,600-ish feet. So we covered quite a bit of distance and quite a bit of elevation, and you can really feel it when you get to that point. And when we stopped for lunch on the way to that, it was the wind picked up significantly. It was hard for me to hear what was going on because the wind was blowing really hard, and the wind chill was really hard. Like your fingers, you can feel how cold it is. And at that point, I didn't have all my gear on, so it was definitely cold. Like I was still doing a lot better than some of the other people who came from much warmer climates that were really struggling. But the interesting thing was a lot of people were the local folks, who was doing the tour group. There was this guy playing his guitar and dancing and everything, just trying to get us pumped. And the elevation or the temperature was not facing them at all. So, they're so used to it that this was nothing for them. So we went from 12,500 to the 15,500 feet. So we pretty much hiked from 7 a.m. to roughly 3 p.m., 3:30 p.m. To get to that final camp, which is the Kibu huts.
Yeah, and I think what's difficult, like Sachin saying, you're climbing it, you're very, very high at this point. So by the time we got to Kibo Hut, is where the elevation really hits. So at that point, we had 6 people evacuated from our group. And like I said earlier, there was a person who had climbed a couple years before who also had to be evacuated, because you don't know how your body's going to react. Like one day you could be fine, and another time it just hits you. And it's also kind of like maintaining yourself really well hydrated. Like if you're not really, 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 really hydrating, then it's going to hit you worse. So it's kind of making sure you're doing all of the things you're supposed to do, like not walking too fast, not walking too slow, getting enough water. And we talked to some of the people who were evacuated, and they're like, yeah, we were like miserable, could barely stand up. And once we were evacuated down to the bottom, it was fine, because it really is just that altitude that really gets you, and you have no idea how it's going to impact you. So then once we got there, we had a couple hours to just eat, and then they have to constantly check the weather, because they don't know, like, if there's a storm or something, or what it looks like. So we slept maybe a couple hours, and then we had to start climbing for the summit at midnight, and it took us like 8 hours to climb up. And that's when you're really, really miserable, because you can't go too fast, because then you'll get altitude sickness, but you can't go too slow, because then you'll get hypothermia. So we would take these little rests, and they're like, all right, it's been a long enough rest. You can't rest anymore, because you will get hypothermia. So they wouldn't even allow us to sit down, because they'd be like, nope, if you sit down, that's it. Like that's not something you can do. So it's just really everything. And that's where the mind game really starts as well, because everything in you tells you to give up. Like, you are climbing and you're like, it's okay. I will stay on this mountain, and I'm fine with it. Like, you're just so, so, so miserable. Once the summit day.
It's one thing I want to mention. Everyone did take altitude medication. That was a requirement, so that does help. So we start taking the medication before we start the climb. So the first day itself, the day before we started climbing. So even though that everyone did take, it still impacts people differently. And the water piece is it's the hydration piece, because you got oxygen in the water, which really also help with the lack of oxygen around you. So the water does help in that regards. Yeah. So it's on the fourth day, once we got to the camp, around 3:30, we unpacked, and we were getting our gear all sorted out, because that's when the next day is when the summit starts. Like Conchita said, we went to dinner. At that point, they were kind of reading the weather, because you either go right at around midnight, or you go in the morning, depending upon what the weather report says, when they see the winds are going to pick up. Because if the wind picks up, the remainder of the oxygen is gone. So you don't want to be there when that happens. So they try to time it. There's no way to avoid wind completely, but you want to see what's the most ideal situation. And if it's really bad, they just tell you can't do it. So you have to do based on what they say. You can't say, no, I'm going regardless. That's not allowed. So the company folks tells you, it's too bad, you cannot go. Because they have evacuation processes, but once the wind, because they have helicopters stand by to evacuate people. We saw several people, the helicopters coming and going, but the helicopters cannot go up to the summit.
I see.
So they can go till that Kibo Hut, that last base that we were at. They can't go past that, and they cannot go at nighttime either. So there's a lot of different variables. So you're kind of at the mercy of the local guides. And the other, and at that point, when we got to Kibo Hut, the two guides of ours, they were pretty much done. They could not guide us. They were, especially one of my friends who came from Utah. He was miserable. He was struggling. And these are avid hikers. They hike a lot in Utah, Colorado, and all those areas. And they really, they backpack all over the place for days at a time, and they were done. So unfortunately, the locals they were watching us. So at that point, they kind of jumped in and started guiding us. Pretty much all of the fourth day when we went up to Kibo Hut. So and then the requirement for climbing the summit, everyone was given a guide, disability or not. you're not allowed to go up the summit by yourself without a guide. And everyone was supposed to give up their backpacks or camel packs, whatever you have. No one was carrying it. It has nothing to do with disability. The guide carries it. And these locals, nothing faces them. They're like running around as if it's, they're just, it's in sea level. And the terrain also significantly changed. It was nothing like what we experienced leading up to it, the climb to the summit. Everything was dirt and rocks leading up to it. Well, at that point, it started getting sandy. So we hit alpine desert, and it was slippery sand. And in the incline drastically changed. So the more we try to go up, we are sliding back down. So that got trickier. And I did not sleep at all, even though we had 2-3 hours. I did not, because I was getting high anxiety and I didn't sleep. So, and an hour or two into it, I was barely able to keep my eyes open. I was really struggling. So I almost felt like I was sleepwalking. And my guide, he's like, there's a word in Swahili they call, they keep saying pole pole. It's like, so pole means slowly, slowly. Again, Sachin, pole. He just kept encouraging me to go. So it was rough. Like Conchita said, it was a mental game. Everything in me wanted to give up, but and the guides really get you hyped up. They really want you to finish. They want you to make it out there. So they really try to do everything in their capacity, everything but carry you.
Wow. And like you were saying about the music too, I had no idea, like live band member, musicians and
yeah, it's freezing. Like, we are freezing. We have gloves on and everything, and we're still cold. Our fingers are still cold. And they're like playing guitar with their gloves, and I'm like, how are you?
I will tell you, like Conchita and I were probably in the best shape as far as temperature control, because we were lucky to be we got sponsorship from Oakley, which I didn't even know Oakley had mountaineer gear or ski gear or whatever. The gear that they sent us was probably the best in the group. So I was actually a little too hot because I overlaid and I had to take my gloves off in the middle for a little bit because my hands were getting too sweaty. So we, in that regard, and again, I keep going back to my friends from Utah who are so used to the cold. Because they told us what the temperature is going to be, which they said the summit's going to be in the mid-20s Fahrenheit, which for me, that's not bad. And for them, they ski below 20 degrees weather, and they were totally prepared for it. But no one calculated the wind chill. So that dropped another 30, 40 degrees. So they were miserable for that also. And everyone pretty much, we brought a lot of hand warmers, and we brought like 3 or 4 packets, and we just gave it away to everyone because they were all miserable.
Yeah, so everyone's like cold and miserable. Sachin and I were miserable but not as cold as everybody else.
Wow, just so many factors it sounds like to consider, and like you guys have said, everyone kind of handles it differently, or your body responds to it differently than anyone else. And wow.
Yeah, and I think hiking all day on the 4th day, then having a few hours to rest and not really sleeping, that definitely played a big factor in how my body was reacting. Not having that opportunity to sleep at least for a handful of hours, and then the terrain drastically changing to high incline and slippery and all that. So there's a lot of switchbacks, and to add to the complication, by the time we were getting closer to the summit, it went from slippery sand to big boulders. And my local guides were giving me all this information where they said, because the poles were pretty much useless at that point because these are big boulders. You kind of had to kind of pull yourself up. At some point, they were like not carrying me up, but like I was just like using their body weight to pull myself up because I could not process the information they were giving me. because I was so exhausted.
Right. Just kind of, you were in their hands, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you have to completely trust the guides for sure, because you are completely completely in their hands, and part of it is letting go and being like, all right, I do have to trust you, because you know you do feel like you're gonna die.
Right. And yeah, I feel like that's such a common theme among, when it comes to blind sports or just
Mhm.
navigating life as someone who's blind or visually impaired or any disability, the trust that we put in other people or our guide dogs or whatever the case may be,
I think being blind, at least for me, one of the disadvantage I like to have information to gauge how much what's left to go, what's the distance left. Being blind, I wasn't getting that information that sighted people were getting. They could see, even though they couldn't really tell, because it does, even visually. They were saying it played tricks with you, where you think you're getting close, then you realize there's still a lot more mountain left. But
right, almost like hallucinating.
yeah,
In a way.
exactly,
Yeah.
because it's first of all dark, and then but not having that information, like how much more to go. Like, I had an idea it's going to take us about 6 to 8 hours, but I couldn't see my watch. I couldn't check my time. I had an Apple Watch on. I was trying to see what the time is, but I had thick gloves on, so I couldn't do that either. So that part was kind of getting frustrating, because I had no information. Here I'm just aimlessly walking, with no idea when we're going to get where we're going. So that also played games, mental games with me, like, where I was just like, this is just nonsense. Like,
Yup. Wow. So then, yeah, that just talked to me about like the final day, reaching the summit. Just, was there like a countdown? Was everyone super excited, just knowing you were that close to?
No, you're
completing it?
miserable. There is no excitement.
Okay, at that point.
There is no excitement at that point. You were just completely miserable. You're willing to die on the mountain at that point, because it just seems endless. Like, it's endless,
Right.
endless.
Monotonous. Yup.
And then right before you get to the summit, it's a bunch of boulders. So it's kind of like you forget you're even going to the summit, and all of a sudden you're there, because you just have to climb. So before you get to the boulders, it's very, very steep, and it's sandy. So you can't walk straight. You have to kind of do switchbacks. And you feel like you're not advancing, because you walk and then you slide down, and then you walk and then you slide down. So it even messes with you. You're like, have I advanced at all? Like, am I moving forward, or am I like 10 feet back from where I started? It's really hard to even gauge, because it's so difficult to gauge how much you've walked, how far you've walked, and you're sliding back, and you can't walk in a straight line. The only people who can walk in a straight line are the locals, because it doesn't phase them, but for everybody else. So once you get to the boulders, you're already completely out of it. And you get to the boulders, and you're just like Sachin said, you're just trying to climb the boulders when you have zero energy, zero. I was like, at one point, I was just like, oh, I'm done. And one of the guys that went with us from here, I was like, tell me a joke. And he's like, I can't. I don't even, he's like, I can't. I don't even know what to tell you.
Right.
So we just like, you just get there, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm at the top. And it happens so out of, like, you don't see it 10 feet away, or you don't know you're almost there, because you're climbing up these boulders, and all of a sudden you climb the last boulder and you're there. So it's very surreal, for sure.
Yes, so Conchita was right behind me for the most part of it, and then the boulders kind of slowed me down. So when we got almost to the summit, my guide, he let me sit at one of the boulders just to kind of relax. Then all of a sudden, I don't hear anyone around me, and then I hear people a little further away, like not too far away. So like, why am I like away from everyone? He's like, where's the summit? He's like, oh, just like, few more feet away. Like, I want to go there. Like, so that final thing, I can totally hear them, but they seemed very close. But that alone took another 10, 15 minutes, which took everything out of me to get to that one portion. And then I got to the summit, and then I don't know what happened. I just got extremely emotional, and I broke down right there. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then you're not allowed, like you get to the summit, you realize, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So we took a couple pictures celebrating, and then it's like, all right, we got to go because you can't be up here a long time because you will get altitude sickness. So then it's going down to get to that first just little base camp.
the Kibo Hut.
The Kibo Hut.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going down the boulders, and after the boulders, you have to go down the sand. So you're pretty much sand surfing down. And Sachin and I had a little bit different techniques. The way I did with my guide is we kind of connected our forearms together. And I mean, it helps that I'm really small. So I just completely put like all of my weight on him. And so he would guide us, and we would just kind of ski down the mountain. And that's how we made it. That's how we made it down from just to that initial hut.
Yeah, so I did. I was a lot more exhausted. So one of the guys. So at that point, I had 3 people helping me out. So one person stood in front of me. So he had a backpack on. This is one of the local guides. So I had both my hands on his backpack, kind of lower portion of his backpack, so I had something to hang on to. And 2 people. I had one person on each side of me, just to make sure I didn't, lose connection with the backpack or anything. So they were kind of hanging onto my elbow a little bit, and we just ran down the mountain because they wanted to make sure I didn't lose the guy when we were going so fast. So it took us 8 hours to, go from Kibo Hut, the 15,500 elevation, to 19,000 feet. It took us an hour and a half to get back to the hut. So we literally we ran down the mountain so fast. Right before we got to the camp, we took a short break, probably an hour or 10 minutes into that skiing down or running down the mountain, and they pulled out cups and gave us hot tea and. Right then and there.
Yeah, you're literally like on this super steep mountain, and they're like, "You want tea?" And I was like, "Sure." And they have like real tea kettle, real cups. I'm like, I don't understand. It seems like this is part of my hallucination, but it's that's what they do, and they have all that on them.
Wow, really neat. Yeah.
Yeah. So we. So we made it to camp. All the people in our group constantly made fun of me because you get a lot of dust on you doing all this, and you're not taking a shower or anything. So one thing, when you get to the camp, there's always a couple of guys waiting for you, where they come and they have these big rags, and they kind of hit your shoes to get rid of all the dust. And I was so exhausted, and I did that every camp I got to. The first thing I looked for was this person who's going to clean my shoes. Not like cleaning, like basically they hit the end of the rag to kind of blow the dirt off from your pants and everything. So I could barely stand, but as soon as I got, the first thing I looked for was, where's this guy? I got the sand off my shoes. So
yeah. And then we get there, and we slept for maybe, because you're exhausted at this point. You're just like, I want to sleep for 10 hours. So we slept for maybe an hour, and then they came and knocked on our door, and they're like, all right, we're leaving in an hour, because if you stay longer, you will get altitude sickness. And it was already starting to hit people. Like, people were already starting to feel really sick. So we had to just pack up our bags, 0 sleep. You're still miserable, you're still exhausted, and you just have to pack up your bags and walk down again all day to get to the next camp on our way down.
So we made our way back to 12,500 feet, the other camp that we were kind of resting for that one day for acclimatization. So so basically the 4th and 5th day was an all-day event of hiking with almost 0 sleep.
Yikes.
Yeah,
wow.
So the 4th and 5th day, so from the time we started hiking 7 in the morning on the 4th day till the time we got back to that 12,000 feet on the fifth day, I had probably at the most an hour and a half of sleep in close to 30, 35, 40 hours.
Right. Amazing. And I'm just curious, like your bodies, I mean, how sore can you describe, how sore were you guys after all this thing, all this was said and done?
I feel like you're just exhausted mainly. I feel like because we are like walking all the time and pretty active, I feel like I was surprisingly not really sore. I expected to be like super sore, and I feel like in general, it was more the exhaustion than the soreness.
Yeah, I wouldn't say my muscles were not sore at all. I will say, obviously going up the mountain is really hard and exhausting. Downhill is equally hard, but it's a very different muscle group it uses.
Mm-hmm.
My problem was I knew the rate because we're covering a lot more distance, a lot at a higher pace. I knew I had to be a little more cautious because I could feel my ankles, more weight on my ankle and my knee. So I was being more careful when I put my foot down so I don't twist my ankle, because there were a couple of times it came kind of close, because that's the last thing that you want to happen when you're going that fast downhill. So there are times, a few times I had to go sideways down just because I didn't want to twist my ankle in certain terrains. So it was I was not sore, but I think I didn't realize some of the issues I was going to face till I finished. Because once we got back here, and that's when I started noticing some of the soreness. It wasn't muscle sore. It was like my big toe on my right leg went fully numb, and it took weeks for that to kind of go away. But it wasn't terrible. Like some people were a lot more sore. Fortunately, in all that regards, we both were in much better shape than some other folks. But we were definitely filthy by that point. Like we were extremely filthy.
A little stinky.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was. They do, like every morning. They come knock on your door. They come say wash. They bring this little bucket with hot water that they heat up. When I say little bucket, it's like probably 3 inches tall, 3-4 inches tall, and maybe a foot in diameter. And so you can maybe use a sponge to kind of wipe your face and stuff like that. So when I got to the 12,000 feet camp after summiting, I was just standing outside the hut, just took my shirt off and started scrubbing down as much as I could because I was like, there was so much sand all over us because of the summit. It was just filthy.
Yeah.
My being germophobic, doesn't help.
True. Yep. So I know, Sachin, you mentioned just kind of the emotion of, reaching the summit, and Conchita, I would imagine similar for you, and just talk to me a little bit more about kind of what it meant to you guys to complete this feat, that is pretty rare in general.
Yeah, I think it's this idea that, like, as blind people, right, we're always told this thing of like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. And so I think doing something that is so ridiculously over the top, so ridiculously hard, kind of gives you a perspective on like, okay, everything in comparison will be like so easy. But I think also just in general, the perception of blindness is so negative that being able to be like, well, you don't want to let me, I don't know, do this ice skating activity. I've climbed Mount Everest. Like, it's okay. I'm going to be okay. Oh, yeah. Kilimanjaro. What am I saying? I'm hallucinating again. But definitely not Everest. But I think, it gives the perception also just to the public of like what blind people are capable of, and doing something that's so over the top. They don't expect us to do basic things like cross the street on our own or hold a job. So doing something so over the top, I think, helps bring some perspective to what blind people are capable of doing.
And even during because it's a busy mountain, there's a lot of people climbing the mountain, and people are seeing all these different people with disabilities. When you get to the camp, you hear people talking from other groups, talking. So it was interesting to listen to some of the. I love to listen into other people's conversations. So I could hear other groups, people saying, "Yeah, I think there's like blind people with that group, and this, people like someone's autistic, and so people were noticing it. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of cool because you have people from all over the globe, doing this, and there's the, even different disabilities going up there, So it was definitely, an experience for us, but I think so a lot of other people were fascinated as well because they're seeing something they probably never thought. And even before leading up to this, I joined a Kilimanjaro online group where I was trying to, get pointers of others who are, going up, or they were giving tips when we just climbed, this is what we experienced. So I was when it was leading up to us about to travel, I shared that, hey, my partner and I we're blind, and that was like, I'm not big on social media. Like, I don't have a lot of followers or something. But this just one post with us saying all these people from around the globe started, encouraging us. I got a few hundred comments just from random people I did not know, encouraging us to do it because they've done it or they're going to do it. And, it was kind of cool to kind of get that much excitement because everyone wants everyone to succeed. And so it was kind of cool. And even when I was on the summit, and I told you, I totally broke down when I got up there, and everyone was kind of going through their emotions. So not a funny thing. Once I got up there on the summit, I found, when I found Conchita and I broke down, suddenly one of the organizers that I met at the UN, he comes running up to me with a satellite phone. Hey, you have a call from, this person that I really know really well and that I work with. She's calling from Greece, and she was at the Dead Sea, which is the lowest point, 2,000 feet below sea level, and I'm here at a high point, and she's calling me. So having that so I went from being completely emotional to I had to kind of switch my tone and how being all excited.
Wow.
So overall, it was a great experience. It was brutal, but no regrets whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And I also wondered, did you guys get to interact quite a bit with some of the other climbers and make any nice connections?
Yeah, I think we all, just in our group and even our guides, we got really, I'm in connection with the local guides who are guiding me. I've been sending, WhatsApp messages to them and, kind of learning about the culture and, because they do this quite often. My guide, he's climbed over 100 times. So we got kind of close to them as well.
Nice. So looking ahead, I'm really curious after this climb, after summiting, Mount Kilimanjaro here, what's next for you guys? Any specific goals you guys have after doing this?
I don't have anything, I have no intention to
still recovering.
Yeah, I have no intention to do every mountain or anything. It's it was something I've always wanted to do, the Kilimanjaro. I don't know why, no specific reason. It just sounded cool. And it's been a long time since I took up a challenge. The last challenge I took up was a long distance bike race, which was a 206-mile tandem bike. Well, it was a bike race, but I was on a tandem bike. It was it's the longest one-day bike race in the country.
Oh, wow.
So it's in Utah, from Utah to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So, so it's been almost 10 years since I did something like that. So, Kilimanjaro was, a new challenge. As well as next challenge, we'll see. I have nothing. And people keep asking, "Are you going to do Everest?" I'm like, I have no desire to do that.
Right. Conchita, how about you?
Yeah, same. I didn't even want to do this. As we were on the way down from the summit, you're just miserable. And my guide, as we're like surfing down the sand, was like, just think of it. It's been a goal and a bucket list and you've completed it. And I was like, I'm only doing this because of Sachin. It was never on my to-do list, never a bucket item. This is all Sachin's fault. I had no desire to be here. So, no, it was...
twisted your arm hard enough.
Yeah. So, it was great, but no, I definitely nothing. I think it's really just like a perspective where nothing will be this hard again, right? So when things get hard and things get tough, you'll be like, okay, but I survived the summit, so I will be good.
Right. So, yeah, I did wonder if it kind of changed your mindset, once you got home and went through this, experienced this, just kind of your attitudes, your overall mindset toward life.
I will tell you, I hold a position that's very, there's a lot going on, professionally. So it was nice to be disconnected from the real world because you have no cell phone coverage, no nothing. You're completely disconnected. And also it was, I think it brought both of us, me and Conchita, a lot closer, as a couple. So it did help us in, to spend that, I don't want to say quality time, but at least that time disconnected from, everything, because we tend to get distracted with everything else,
all the notifications and
alerts. Exactly.
Yep.
But you don't have that, you just spend time with each other, so and other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. All right, so before we wrap up, just any kind of social media, contact info if anyone is interested in maybe getting in touch with you guys, if they're curious about climbing themselves, anything you want to mention?
Yeah, well, first I want to mention real quick our sponsors, because we would not have been able to do this without them.
Sure.
So Accessibility Accelerator is the organization we went with, so they definitely sponsored a lot. And then we also had IRA, who, of course, as blind people, they do the visual interpreting with a live person, so they were a sponsor. We also had Humanware, who makes a lot of technology, sponsor us. And then we had Ezeler Exotica, who is kind of an umbrella company over like Oakley, who we got our gear from. That was amazing. We were not cold at all. But they also are kind of an umbrella company over Humanware and a bunch of other organizations. So we were able to do the climb due to them, because it is a pricey thing to do for sure. And so we were able to, have gear that would have cost us hundreds of dollars if we were to have gotten that ourselves. So it definitely made it possible to do the climb. Yeah,
and as far as, we both are on all the different social media channels, Facebook and LinkedIn and all those, Conchita's more active on it than I am, but it's probably the best way to get hold of us.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, I'll definitely put. I can find some of those links, or we can certainly be in touch on that contact info to include in the show notes here as well for everyone.
That's good.
All right. Excellent. Well, yeah, really, really enjoyed this conversation. Just want to thank you, Conchita and Sachin, so much for your time. Congratulations on this amazing achievement. Just, wow, hearing the story, it's like, I don't think I could ever survive even, an ounce of that experience. So really just kudos to you guys. Congrats. I mean, what an achievement. And thank you so much for joining us here on Eyes Free Sports.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Absolutely. To hear more episodes of the Eyes Free Sports podcast and to subscribe, search for Eyes Free Sports on your favorite podcast platform or visit eyesfreesports.com. Be sure to follow the Eyes Free Sports podcast at facebook.com/eyesfreesports and on Twitter @eyesfreesports.